All right, guys, episode 23 of a podcast for all seasons. Tonight we're going to talk about new premieres. So we had on the CW the Flash and Arrow premiere this week, and we're going to give that a mention. We're going to talk maybe briefly about Gotham, some new comics stuff. I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Eric Joseph. What's up, Eric? And introduce us as to what we're going to talk about tonight and start into it.
Hi everybody, this is Eric Joseph of DarkKnightNews.com, ComicBookMovie.com, and Multiverse Entertainment. As Josh told you, we're going to talk about the latest premieres based on DC Comics properties. This week we had the series premiere of The Flash and the Season 3 premiere of Arrow. The Flash, I got to see it twice this week because they aired an encore last night. Yeah, that was just a stunning debut. It deserved to be the highest rated CW premiere in 5 years, and it deserved to beat Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the ratings. I don't know if it has, with DVR recordings, but it certainly did in the overnight ratings. So you may remember in our previous episode I lambasted Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it's showing people want superheroes in their superhero shows, and yes, a show on the CW got higher ratings than a show on ABC, and I think that's saying something. And before we proceed, we are talking spoilers. We don't want to spoil everything for you, but some things actually, will probably be pretty huge. So hopefully you've seen the episodes by now. I'll address Grant Gustin as the Flash, pretty much what I said after we had already seen him on Arrow last season. I think he's a great fit for Barry Allen. He's got charisma and charm. He doesn't have to be an overly buff guy, as we said many episodes before this one. The Flash basically just needs a jogger's physique. I'm glad to see the costume will be undergoing slight alterations in the next few episodes. There are like certain parts of the costume that are cool, and then certain. I don't think it's as great of a costume as say Arrow or Arsenal are sporting right now, and I actually like Reverse Flash's costume better. If you haven't seen those, we have a link from. A link to a CBR article on our Facebook page for a podcast for all seasons, and some set photos leaked of a fight between the Flash and Professor Zoom, aka the Reverse Flash, and I'm kind of glad the costume wasn't completely yellow for him, because I think that would have been a little funky looking in live action. It's kind of like yellow and fading to black as you get farther toward his feet. You'd have to see it if you haven't already. But getting back to what was this week, not to get too caught up in what's to come in the series. As I was watching it, I was really reflecting on the supporting cast and how much I liked them. I think Candice Patton who's playing Iris West? I believe that was her name. I think she did a good job as a female lead, and then Cisco Ramon, the future Vibe, and Caitlin Frost, Caitlin Snow, the future Killer Frost, played by Danielle Panabaker. I think they all gave made great first impressions on me. What I was thinking as I was watching this is the CW, at least in the shows that I've gotten into, has a real knack for finding supporting casts. Supernatural, which has a large cult following, just had these, other characters come in like Castiel, Crowley, and there have been many others who were popular. Smallville, I loved so many members of that cast, and then Arrow, everyone plays their roles well, and I think the Flash is following that model well, and I think it's gonna have great potential. I think it's going to be just as good as Arrow, but a lighter tone. For now, I'm still thinking Arrow is going to be my favorite comic book show on TV. Um, it's a very exciting time to be a fan of DC Comics. I'll just say that I'm throwing a theory out there before I move on to Arrow. I think Dr. Wells is the reverse Flash, as we see for some reason he faked paralysis. Granted, we have Detective Eddie Thawne, so we're all thinking he's Eobard Thawne, but it could be too obvious. Remember, Arrow gave us a red herring. We all thought Tommy Merlin was going to be his arch nemesis, and
Well, hey, before we start getting into spoilers, why don't you tell us? I don't mean to cut you off, but why don't you tell us first things first? What did you think? If you had to say, should people watch it? Is it worth watching? Overall, what did you think of the show before you get into like specific spoilers? 'Cause I want to see what your perspective, because we haven't had a whole lot of time to talk about it between ourselves before we get on air.
well, I pretty much said how much potential I think it has. Yeah, people absolutely should watch it. If you like superheroes, you like Arrow, sounds like Josh has a few behind him. Um, you'll definitely like this show. As I said, it's a bit of a lighter tone than Arrow, even though in a minute when we talk about Arrow, I'll say that Arrow's kind of getting lighter in a sense that the characters are going through an evolution of their own. But yeah, it was a great episode and origin story for Barry Allen. The villain wasn't so hot, but and I mean I don't mean hot as in aesthetically as being attracted. I mean just the execution presentation, but it served well for his first outing as the Flash and emerging as a hero. Uh, Weather Wizard, a character I've never had much affinity for. It just, I'll say though, yeah, it was pulled off a little bit better than the Scarecrow kid in the Smallville pilot, but Weather Wizard, you might agree with me, was kind of in essence that role if we're to compare Smallville and Flash.
Yeah, I was gonna ask for your comparison between like Smallville, Gotham, and Arrow's premieres versus The Flash, and I was gonna say my own as well when it comes to my point in time. I agree with you though. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Scarecrow kids, presentation in Smallville episode 1. I mean, granted, he wasn't as much of a foil in Smallville. He was kind of a weaker villain. This was a pretty big villain for a first outing. But yeah, what do you think about the premiere of it versus, say, some of the more popular comic book shows that we've seen?
I think all those shows gave very solid first outings. Though I would say that overall, if we're talking pilot episodes, Smallville, The Flash, and even Arrow had stronger debuts than Gotham, even though we both said that we enjoyed the Gotham premiere, but it got better with subsequent episodes. Gotham just had a lot of ideas to get across in its first episode. Now, before I wrap my thoughts on Flash, I want to get back to my theory on Reverse Flash, and that I think Eddie Thawne may just be simply Eddie Thawne, a descendant of Eobard Thawne from the future. For those who aren't familiar, Eobard Thawne, I believe, is from the 26th century, and comes back in time to. He has a vendetta against the Flash, to put it succinctly. And I think they'll probably interpret things in new ways to keep viewers on their toes. But as we saw at the end when Harrison Wells looks at that futuristic newspaper headline from 10 years in the future, and it says Flash disappears in crisis, I'm kind of wondering if possibly he's traveled back in time and the particle accelerator accident was no accident at all, and in fact, was done on purpose by him to possibly create this big event that would create metahumans and prepare the Earth for a coming crisis. It would almost make the Reverse Flash a sympathetic villain, not quite an anti-hero, excuse me. Because before the show went to black at the end, you saw kind of like a reverse, a yellow Flash lightning type thing, and I think that was foreshadowing. I think they might have been telling us more in the premiere than we thought they did. I noticed this, of course, when I watched it again on Wednesday night as opposed to Tuesday, because Tuesday, I was just taking it all in, and then Wednesday is when more cogs started to turn in my head. But at the risk of me ranting much longer, I'll let you give your Flash opinions before we talk Arrow. And by the way, rating this pilot, I think I would probably give it like a solid 8.5, but okay, your take on The Flash.
I really enjoyed it. I only watched the one time so far, and so my DVR messed up and did not record the premiere, which upset me greatly. So I downloaded the episode, and I'm not 100% certain if there was like extra footage that was put. We heard about that 3 minutes of extra footage they were talking about.
No, it's just a longer trailer.
It was just a longer intro trailer? Okay.
Yeah,
so I enjoyed the episode. I will say that it was really well paced. For watching it without commercials, sometimes you feel a little bit of that hard cut that they give during commercial breaks when you're watching television without commercials episodically, like on Netflix and things. And it did not feel very herky-jerky with the pacing. I guess it stands to reason that the pacing of The Flash would be this kind of fast-paced, picked up pace from the kind of slow, methodical pace that we get in the Arrow. Although, obviously in the Arrow we get tons of fast action and whatnot, but it's more of a slow burn character drama of, who is Oliver Queen, especially who is Oliver Queen that came back from the island, and what is his relationship to this thing called the Arrow, and what is this relationship of the character he's becoming, and it's definitely a different tone of show than Arrow. I love the fact that they exist in the same universe. But as far as the pacing of the show, it seemed like it picked up from the get-go. You see the murder of Barry Allen's mother. That it's somehow supernatural in origin, and you get the idea that it has something maybe to do with his eventual development of powers. I won't get too much into spoilers. People who are non-comic book fans, you're probably not going to be listening to this show, but if you caught it on YouTube because you were looking up The Flash and you're thinking, hey, should I watch it, and you listen to it, you should watch it, and I won't spoil who potentially is going to be the villain or revealed killer of his mother. I also suggest staying off of Wikipedia if you don't want to know. But it's definitely going to open up for some extraordinarily well-done progression over the course of the episode. And in fact, it gives that series one of the strongest overall villains for any of the aforementioned premieres. Outside of like the enigma of who killed Bruce Wayne's parents, the unnamed face, or like the Joe Chill, the random any man murderer of Thomas and Martha Wayne, that's not necessarily the ultimate villain of Batman. He's like the personification of the bad guy, and that eventually becomes the enemy of Batman. And Smallville had its Lex Luthor, of course, who was a friend, and Gotham has its villains, of course, but this is a very distinct one of his most distinct villains in the Rogues Gallery. Well, actually, not a member of the Rogues Gallery proper of the Flash. So that's going to lead to some interesting stuff over the course of the next few seasons if they don't. As far as the rest of the premiere, it is Candice Patton. You were right, who plays Iris West. I think that she's okay. I'm not blown away by her. I'm definitely. I don't think she's as strong of a female lead as, say, the actresses who play Felicity Smoke or who play Laurel Lance. I don't think that she's as strong of an actress as the actresses playing those respective characters, or say like Kristen Kirk's Lana Lang or something like that. But she's definitely got a charm. She's got a very much of that like girl next door, you know, I guess doe-eyed thing that's very effective and very much like the comic book fanboy thing, and I think she'll play a pretty decent Iris West. I actually like the character. The character's name is escaping me, but who played the actor playing her father. As I grasp for words, I'm sorry about that. But the overall cast, I wasn't blown away by. I will say that there's been a few shows like that where I wasn't exactly blown away by the supporting cast, but they definitely grew on me. I think I mentioned it last week when we were talking about Gotham. I was mentioning Castle and my affection for that show, and its supporting cast did not blow me away at first, but they definitely grew on me. So I think that the actors are good enough. I'd say that amongst them, I thought that the actress who played Dr. Snow's character, was pretty good. And then it's again escaping me the actor who played the doctor who had the particle accelerator. He is from a few different shows. I know he's had a pretty I don't want to say a storied history, but he's had some prominent roles on television shows and whatnot. But yeah, as far as like Carlos Valdez, who played Cisco Ramon, I wasn't blown away. Again, he seems like extraordinarily generic, but overall the show, I think it nailed a lot of stuff. And one of the things that definitely nailed was the original villain. Yes, he was a little bland. He definitely didn't he didn't come across as like a truly like disturbingly lethal villain, but which you never expect in a premiere. But sometimes they want to start these things off with a bang to set the tone, and I think that they set the tone. Like, this is going to be theoretically a pretty big show as far as like special effects are concerned. Obviously, they have to have that with all the running the Flash does, and some of the effects that they're going to have when he kind of slows down time as he moves fast. Those things are going to build, and I think having a character who's like, yeah, I'm going to make a gigantic fucking tornado in the very first episode, it was pretty good. What I thought was actually one of the most humorous things was that the character's like characteristic grimace and scowl was also represented in the police ID sketch. I thought that was like the funniest thing. It was like the actual picture from the police's database and the sketch were like the identical photo, scowl and all. I thought it was very hilarious. But that aside, it was a really interesting. I will say that it got me really excited. Like, it reminded me of some of the awesome fight scenes in the beginning of Arrow's first season, where it was like, holy shit, man, they're not holding back at all. I guess after having watched Smallville for 10 seasons, that show was so much of a slow burn in terms of like the building of Clark's powers, and we kind of dropped right into the Arrow being a badass already because he had gained 5 years of lethal skills on that hellish island. And you don't necessarily need martial arts skills when you can move at the speed of light or very, 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 very quickly. I hope to see his powers develop a little bit more, the Flash that is, over the course of this season, simply because he should be faster, much, much faster. And obviously I think he'll grow into that. They'll definitely have his powers expand as time goes on and as he learns to control them and all this, that, and the other. But I think I'm getting off track to more speculation. So as far as the show is concerned, though, I really enjoyed it. When at the very end, was it Dr. Wells? I think was his name, the character's name, Eric.
Yes.
Yes, Dr. Wells. I'm so horrible with names, especially for brand new shows. So the Dr. Wells character, he kind of gives Barry this rousing speech at the end, like you have what it takes to be a hero and whatnot, and you have what it takes to be better. And then he like really pours on this speed to do a kind of a reverse run to this tornado that the weather wizard created. Like, I got giddy excited. I was like, hell yes! I mean, they did not hold back in terms of showing, like, this character is insanely powerful. I thought that the cameo of him, of Stephen Amell's Arrow, or Oliver Queen, on the show was a really good touch. And they had a little hint of that on Arrow's premiere as well. But it made me extraordinarily excited. It just made me kind of do this, holy shit, if they keep doing awesome stuff like this, like, people are going to be very blown away. It's kind of unfortunate that the Flash, the longest running speedster character in comic books, was the first to really get, or rather was not the first to get his special of 2014 quality special effects treatment of his speed powers before we saw Quicksilver's Evan Peters, do it in X-Men Days of Future Past. They used so many awesome tropes. Now we saw some of that in Smallville when we saw Clark go to super speed, but they're obviously playing those powers a slightly different way in the Flash, and to see what they're going to do with his powers and the speed and the slowing down of time and seeing his effect on things is going to be pretty interesting. I'd give the show I would say at least an 8. I would say maybe 8.5 as well. I think 9's a really strong rating, so I don't be like, I'll give it a 9 since you give it an 8.5. But I can see it being a very enjoyable show. I don't mind the dark, brooding tone of Arrow by any means, but I kind of like the fact that it's a little bit more of a bright, not necessarily cheery, for lack of a better word, because it starts out, my mother was murdered in front of me as a child. It's not as bright and cheery as one might assume from the fact that it's this bright, shiny red character such as the Flash. But the tone is definitely, the character of Grant Gustin's Barry Allen is he's meant to be lovable. He's quirky. He's he's quipping all the time, and he's kind of quick-witted, but he's also got like a little bit of a reserved charm that makes him likable. And I think that that's gonna do really well for the tone of the show. As far as the Professor Zoom stuff, so. Eobard Thawne, if I'm speculating, which it would be pretty interesting if I was right, this is just like pulled out of my head on a whim. As far as speculation of who the character of Dr. What was his name again? Help me, Eric.
Dr. Wells.
Yes, Dr. Wells. I'm gonna have to look up the actual actor's name. But as far as the Dr. Wells character is concerned, there is very good chance, I think, that he is possibly Eobard Thawne. He is possibly Professor Zoom. Is one of the Flashes. For those who aren't accustomed to the entire history or back history of the DC universe, he's one of the Flash's biggest villains. He's often known as the Reverse Flash. He's got speed powers as well. He is very plausible that he is. It would make a lot of sense, though. It's Tom Cavanaugh. I couldn't remember his name. Tom Cavanaugh just came to me. He's very likely that he could be the character. And what I think is, as speculation is concerned, we have the character of Eddie Thawne, hotshot detective Eddie Thawne, who's also, the love interest of Iris West, or one of the love interests of Iris West, who in the comic books has been the Flash's wife and is the Flash's girlfriend and whatnot throughout the history of that character. It would make a whole lot of sense if Somehow there is some type of animosity brought up between those two characters, maybe spurned by the Iris West stuff. Classic love triangle stuff that the CW loves to do. But it would make a lot more sense if, like, something horrible happens as a result of something that Flash does to this Eddie Thawne character, and then in the future, now, Wells is granting his revenge, coming back in time and wreaking havoc on the Flash. I could see something like that happening, and I wouldn't be shocked if it did. But the ending was awesome. I don't know if anyone noticed. I paused it and I rewound it a couple times, but the outfit for the Flash is definitely different in the future. When they show the newspaper at the end, it's a scene that people are talking about apparently quite a bit online. But yeah, it's 10 years in the future. They talk about a crisis. They name dropped a Queen Industries Wayne Tech merger, which was awesome. And then I think they also name dropped something else that was very much. Oh, it was Red Skies Are Clearing, which is that's a classic. Either World invasion or Red Sun over the planet to weaken Superman. In the comics. That's
more so just having to do with a crisis.
Crisis or an apocalypse of some type. A global apocalypse of some type. But it's definitely vaguely open to interpretation. They had plenty of Easter eggs in the show, which were fun, like the Grodd and the cage that's torn open that says Grodd on it. That was a cool little cameo. But yeah, there's going to be some fun speculation over who the Dr. Wells character is, and I don't know. I think it's much too obvious that he's Professor Zoom, but at the end, it zooms in close up on the character's face, and you see like this yellow flash, which is what Barry Allen saw in this electricity cloud that killed his mother. What looked like the outline of a person in yellow. So it's very possible that that he is this character, or that he's maybe somehow related to the character that killed his mother. Who knows? It's all fun for speculation. I mean, but yeah, I was really blown away by the premiere. I thought that they were going to do a good job. I mean, it's really the golden age of like superhero television or even comic book television. People kind of forget that like The Walking Dead is a comic book series. People who just watch the show, and it's pretty amazing that like all these comic book shows exist. I mean, I know that we aren't you aren't a huge fan of S.H.I.E.L.D. I haven't really given it its due yet. But it's just awesome that all these shows exist that are from comic books, and it's becoming so pervasive. They're taking over the box office, they're taking over television, and they're kind of being recognized as like a enjoyable like medium to take good stories and put them on TV or put them on screen. So I'm excited, but yeah, I'd give it an 8.5 at least. It might even be bumped up to a 9 if some of the supporting characters were a little more intriguing. I think that they were a little blandly generic at times, so that's the only weakness that I really saw. But the major characters, like the Detective Iris, or Detective West rather, Detective West, the Dr. Wells character, and obviously Grant Gustin's Barry Allen. I think that he was surprisingly charming. I did not see him very much as a male lead when I saw him on Arrow. Did you feel the same way at all? Did you? I mean, what was your thoughts on when he was on the on Arrow last season?
I said I believed him as Barry Allen. I mean, I believed him as a guest character. I would have to believe him as a starring role.
Yeah, I mean, believing him as he definitely was I don't want to say tolerable, like he was tolerable like an unpleasant odor, but I think he did a good job as a guest character on Arrow. But I just wasn't seeing him necessarily as the character of Barry Allen, the Flash, and I was a little concerned that he didn't have enough of the gravitas to pull off a leading man role. And I'm not the only person. I had read a few reviews and things, people going, I didn't know if this character was gonna, pull it off, but he really did. He really did. Like I said, he's charming. I like what they did with some of the emphasis on the fact that he's like got an excellent scientific mind. That was kind of like shades of BBC's Sherlock. I don't know if anyone's watches that show who's listening, but when he's like looking at the tire treads and things like that. I like the fact that he had the pop-up script on screen, kind of like instead of doing an inner monologue, they did showing what he was finding out just at a glance. So I mean, if they balance a lot of those things well, he's a really smart person with the fact that he's got these incredible powers. He'll be able to use those two combined very well, a la Peter Parker's Spider-Man. Being a genius helps him be Spider-Man more, and so it stands to reason. Barry Allen being very very smart will help him use extreme speed very very well. But yeah, anyone who's listening, you watch the show. It's very good. It's an extraordinarily well done compliment to the Arrow show as well. They will have crossover stuff, so I highly suggest checking it out. We give it. Do we give it 2 thumbs up, Eric? Do we give it 4 thumbs up?
I guess so.
All right. So, what did you think of Arrow's premiere? Season 3 Arrow premiere.
I thought it was pretty cool. When I was watching it, did anyone else feel like it went to commercial too quickly, or?
Oh, absolutely.
I always feel like there were commercial breaks coming too soon. It was like watching something on Spike.
Right.
It was very good. As I kind of said earlier, it feels like although we have an urban, gritty take on this show as opposed to The Flash or Smallville, it seems like the characters are becoming more comfortable in their own skin. And, Oliver Queen isn't the same man he was 2 years ago. I mean, they've said, and by they I mean the producers, have said before that we will see him develop over the course of the series from the Vigilante / the Hood to the Arrow to the Green Arrow. And we see him becoming more and more of a responsible hero. He has his lighter moments. He smiles more. He wants Diggle to abandon his crusade and become a family man. Another thing I really liked about it was I think the coolness factor was upped by having Arsenal out in the field with him in that badass costume, because you're essentially seeing 2 arrows and seeing them work in tandem. It just feels like things are going to get even more badass this season, and you can only hope that each season you watch of a TV show gets better and better. And
that Arsenal costume is completely badass.
I think we're just going to keep upping the ante as Arrow goes along. Seeing Peter Stormare as the new Vertigo, I was pretty thrilled to see, because I'm a decently big fan of Peter Stormare. And obviously we're starting to plant seeds of where the season's going. We know Matt Nable as Ra's al Ghul is the big bad for this year, as Deathstroke was last year. And we knew, and again, talking spoilers, we knew at some point for Laurel Lance to become the true Black Canary. And keep in mind, they never ever called Sarah Lance the Black Canary. She was called the Canary. Simply that. So we knew that, or at least had a suspicion that she was going to die horribly at some point, and that's when Laurel was going to definitely start her path into becoming the Black Canary for Arrow.
She can't just die. She has to die horribly, as you said. She can't just...
And it happened right at the end, and I was kind of shocked they did it in the premiere, but it was great for shock value. Now, next week's episode's called Sarah, and they said we haven't seen the last of her in flashbacks, so I do hope we get to explore her origins, how she got into the League of Assassins. I know that for next week's trailer they showed the villain Komodo, who I think is going to be a bit of a different interpretation for the TV show than in the comics. And I can't really speak for the comics much because I'm pretty soon about to start reading Green Arrow in the New 52, and I believe Komodo might have been a character developed by Jeff Lemire once he was on the book. But I kind of think that Komodo might have been the one who killed her, but he was, I guess you could say, he was just the trigger finger, or he was just there to carry out orders. I think that there's something larger at play here. Someone in the League of Assassins is probably not entirely thrilled with her indecisiveness, and I don't think we've seen the last of Nisa Al Ghul either. It's definitely going to be an exciting season, and I would probably give this premiere also probably like an 8.5. Arrow doesn't disappoint me.
What did you think about what did you think about the Brandon Routh's Atom, or he's not the Atom yet?
Yeah, he's really for now, but I thought it was interesting to see him play a character differently than Clark Kent / Superman, and I did believe him as a different character. But you're always going to see him as Superman in a way, because he's played one of the biggest characters in the history of fiction. But I think he established himself as in the identity of Ray Palmer, and it's going to be interesting to see where that character goes. I think they've kind of hinted that you might not necessarily see him use his powers on Arrow, maybe on the Flash, because as we said, these shows are going to cross-pollinate. So he's not a principal member of the cast for Arrow, so I wouldn't rule out seeing him pop up in the Flash before the year's over with. Before I turn it back over to you, I'll just throw a brief mention for this week's episode of Gotham. Another strong effort. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it because we have other topics to cover. But yes, another great effort going forward. As we said last week, we think that show's only going to get stronger as it develops. And some of the supporting characters had a chance to shine. Once again, Robin Lord Taylor turns in a great performance as the Penguin. Young Bruce, as I've said, people are still bitching, calling him Little Batman. And if you truly understand the character, and we said this in the previous episode, he became Batman mentally the moment his parents were shot in the alley. And we kind of see him thinking about what it is to be a vigilante or hero in this episode, and he's probably starting to swirl thoughts around in his head. But I thought there was a quote in my head. I was kind of thinking like, "Yes, Father, I shall become a balloon."
I shall become a balloon.
Balloon Man begins, and I've always made jokes with friends and stuff that I was kind of relieved that this episode wasn't about lunars being called the Balloon Man. So,
was I the only one who thought it was just kind of unusual that they didn't try to maybe get people in a helicopter and just go get them?
Oh no, they just gave up. But they're
like, oh well, they're in a balloon. Fuck them.
I'm glad no one was humping balloons or anything. But okay, your thoughts on this year's premiere of Arrow, and if you want to add anything about the latest Gotham had to offer.
Yeah, I think it was really strong. They often find themselves on some of these types of, not necessarily these types of shows, because there's not that many superhero shows to pull from, but I mean second, third year, sophomore, junior, series where the characters kind of get into a groove. Like you said, they're kind of getting more comfortable with the character that they're playing, the actors, that is. Also, the writers get more comfortable writing them. The characters are now established, so you're not still in the process of developing these relationships between the characters, and it makes it a little bit easier. But the interesting thing that Arrow is doing is, yeah, they seem to be constantly trying to develop the character of Oliver Queen and Arrow. Not only I mean, I don't want to talk about them in like a two-faced dichotomy in that they're two different people, but I definitely see that they're trying to present that Oliver Queen is starting to kind of lose the line between the two, but also that he does want there to distinctly be a difference between Arrow and Oliver Queen. But the fact that they're trying to develop, the fact that he's changing as things go on, as these different experiences happen in his life, as heroic acts, pitfalls are happening, as important characters are dying versus great triumphs. He's developing who he is. I mean, those are things that legitimately shape the way that people are, and so it's actually fairly realistic and organic in terms of their development of that character. So that's actually really refreshing, because it's not something you see in shows very often. I mean, you get the same character, they kind of nail down who that character is after a season or two, and then it's the same gimmick for the rest of the entire series. Even Smallville kind of fell into that trope. It's not necessarily a negative perspective, is what I'm saying, but it's one of those things where it does sometimes become stale, and for a perfect representation, I give you the last 7 seasons of House on television, House MD. It's just, there's only so much of, House, you'll never have anyone love you if you don't stop acting like an asshole, but I'm going to act like an asshole because I'm a genius. But you're an asshole, but you're a genius. That whole thing. I think that's interesting. I mean, that's the just one little thing that came to my mind when I was watching it. But it was enjoyable. I don't love the direction they're going with the Diggle character. I mean, like, no one really cares about that relationship with him and his ex-wife / girlfriend. I mean, obviously characters are going to change. I think it's interesting that they're going to have some kind of take on it. They're not going to write him out of the show, obviously, or have him take a back seat. At least I would hope not, because he's an enjoyable character. But I thought it was kind of funny. I kept expecting some type of dialogue, where he's like, "Hey, I can make my own choices. I understand you don't want me to do this." As Oliver Queen tells him, he doesn't want him to join his crusade. He doesn't want him to kind of lose his life to this crusade, both metaphorically and literally, because things are getting dangerous for the Arrow, as after him and Felicity Smoak's character are RPG'd in a restaurant. But I think that's interesting. I would have liked to see a little bit more development over the course of the season with the Felicity and Oliver relationship, if there was going to be one at all. They teased us. Why? Why do you have to tease us? But I think that it's pretty good. I thought that Brandon Routh's Ray Palmer was an interesting little dichotomy. Yeah, you will always kind of think of him as the Superman Clark Kent character, since he played it in Superman Returns. But it's nice to see him in something. I like him as an actor. Every time I see the actor who plays the lead on TV's Grimm, I'm like, man, that guy looks like Brandon Routh. To which I just was like, why aren't you Brandon Routh? So I'm glad to finally see him get some play. But it was a really strong episode. As far as the Sarah Canary stuff, I didn't expect them to bring her back so quickly. And so when they did, I was kind of like, where are they going to go with this? And I thought maybe they were going to give us the second she met with Laurel. I was like, something horrible is going to happen. But I thought they were maybe going to like tease us that something was going to happen. And since the next episode was titled Sarah, I thought that they were going to have something significant happen on that episode, but they gave us the death of the original Canary on this episode, which was kind of shocking. I was pretty damn surprised, and it was a pretty brutal killing. Was I the only one who thought that the voice, when she turned around and said, he said, did he address her as Sarah or as Canary? I can't remember.
I can't remember, but it's purposefully distorted, though.
Yeah, it was purposefully distorted.
Last season, she got pierced by an arrow metaphorically, now literally.
Yeah, I thought that they maybe intentionally made it sound like Arrow, obviously, or Oliver Queen or Stephen Amell.
That went over your head.
No, I got the joke. I went past it. I think that they are intentionally trying to, obviously throw us off as to who killed her. Yeah, maybe it is Komodo because he's going to be on this season. Maybe it's Merlin. I mean, obviously the fact that they're using arrows, but Komodo is also an archer as well. So now we're going to have three archers, but so is Ray, not Ray Palmer. So is the character of Arsenal, Roy Harper. So the mystery is slightly a bit of a tease, but she obviously knew him. She obviously recognized who the killer was, so it would lead us to believe maybe it's someone.
It was Maggie Simpson.
What's that?
Maggie Simpson.
It was Maggie Simpson. Yeah, who killed Sarah Lance? Yeah, we're gonna find out it was Maggie all along. But as far as the episode was concerned, it was a really strong premiere. They did have a little tease with the. They had Grant Gustin come in for. It was a quick little back and forth scene. It was a similar scene that was in the Flash premiere, where he's kind of like, "Hey, I'm awake. I woke out of my coma. I need to talk to you." So that was pretty interesting. If it's possible for them to do like these little bit part cameo back and forth over the course of the season, that would be really awesome. I know that it's not necessarily logistically possible, as actors have different schedules and different shooting locations and all that.
They're all in Vancouver, I think.
Yeah, I think they're all in Vancouver, so it might make the logistics a little bit easier, but shooting schedules being what they are, I know that Arrow very, very often, I follow Stephen Amell on Facebook and whatnot, and he's always talking about night shoots. They're always doing night shoots because, it makes it easier to do all the night scenes, obviously, instead of having to do it all on stage. But it would be very nice if they had these little cameos back and forth between the two series. Because, like I said, they complement each other very well. It's not. I don't know if it's an intentional dichotomy, but it's very much like the Batman, Arrow's Batman to the Flash's Superman. It's like one's kind of bright and shiny, the other one's a little bit more dark and brooding. You see Starling / soon to be Star City being the Gotham-esque versus Central City being the Metropolis analog or whatever. But I think that they complement each other well. That light and dark, they definitely do. They definitely do work together well. So that'll be interesting to see what developments, what characters do crossovers. But I would give the Arrow premiere. What would you rate it? I don't know if you gave a rating number.
I said 8.5.
8.5. Yeah, I'd give it the same. I'd give it an 8.5. I think it was really solid. It wasn't absolutely perfect. It had a little bit of pacing in terms of I know that they don't want to just drop dead end characters, but some of the Diggle stuff, it's kind of like, okay, I get it. He's having a kid. They could have just teased us. They didn't necessarily need to have the hospital scene. I thought it was a little bit pointless. Some of it's kind of falling into classic romance tropes that you see on series that are kind of semi-dramatic, dramatic series, especially on the CW, because the people who are behind the scenes love to put an emphasis on relationships. But the Felicity stuff, it was nice to see, that they're developing that relationship and those characters. But it's a classic trope to have like. It reminded me of Smallville. It's like get everyone's hopes up for a Chloe Clark romance to have them smashed in the very same episode that they're originated in. It's just I've seen it before in a few different series, and so that felt a little bit stale. But other than that, it was a really really solid episode, and it ended with a not is it a it's not a bang when it's an arrow. What would you call it? Like a schnicked. I don't know. Whatever sound effect. It ended with arrows stabbing into. It ended with a thud because she fell in the cement.
I would go with a.
A thump. Yeah, it ended with a thump, not a bang. But very interesting. I love the Arsenal and Arrow team up stuff. It was very cool. I think they need to ramp up his costume a little bit. Make it a little bit more cool because Arsenal can't have a cooler costume.
I think they said they're going to do that eventually.
They're gonna have to. Okay, so that's my thoughts on Arrow. Very, very good. If you're not watching those shows, by God, I'm pretty sure you can find Arrow Season 1 on Netflix, and I'm sure Arrow Season 2 is supposed to be coming relatively soon. I think Stephen Amell has hinted at that on his Facebook page, I think, vaguely, if I remember reading correctly. So it'd pretty easy to catch up on that show and start watching The Flash. But Gotham was good. I thought it was kind of funny. It's like, Balloon Man, yeah, the terrifying character of Balloon Man. I didn't know where they were going to go with that because I didn't really know anything about what was going to happen in the show. But I thought it was very interesting. They introduce a vigilante who kills. It obviously is going to play on the conscience of Jim Gordon's character and make him say, okay, if once you're going outside of the law has no purpose anymore. It's like without the law, it's exactly what it is. It's lawlessness, and what's the purpose of having the law if people are gonna work outside of it? The other thing is that you saw Bruce Wayne's interpretation of the same thing. That is maybe the answer to the problem of crime or the problem of people that are murdering. Not only criminality as a whole, but criminality and corruption and things like that. Maybe it isn't within the boundaries of the law. I mean, I know people who are familiar with the history of Batman know that it's a pretty popular concept that at one point he considered going into the police academy and exacting his justice through the prism of the law, and then realized that there was going to be a point at which he wasn't going to be able to bring the type of justice that he thought was necessary, within the realms and boundaries of the criminal justice system. So this was interesting, but you saw that he obviously drew the distinct line of yes, but he's killing them, and that's against the law. But so is vigilantism. So obviously, that's the great debate of the vigilante discussion is, at what point does vigilantism go too far, or is there any place for it in a civilized society? I think that Death Wish 2 gives us the answer that it absolutely has a place. I know that's one of Eric's favorite movies, but yeah, it was a strong episode. I think it'll continue to develop really well. The actor who plays the Penguin, yeah, he does a fantastically weird, creepy, interesting job. They've developed the characters a little bit more. I continue to love Harvey Bullock, Donald Logue's Harvey Bullock, and Ben McKenzie's Commissioner Detective Gordon. He's growing on me quite a bit. Again, I'll reiterate that I was not a big fan of that actor, and he's definitely growing on me. I won't bother giving that episode a rating because we haven't talked about it at length, but it's another good outing. We wanted to talk about it briefly simply because it's we're now that we have yet a third comic book series playing simultaneously. I thought we would mention it, but check out Gotham. It's definitely a worthwhile show. It's worth your time. It's as good as any police drama. Plus, it's got much more interesting characters than most of them. So I would say definitely check it out if that's something that's interesting to you. And if you like comics, obviously you should definitely check Gotham out. But on to new comics, Eric. What's next?
Um, did you want to talk Futures End? Because I was wondering.
I'm afraid if we talk like that, we're gonna go. So we got about 5 minutes left, maybe
Yeah,
5, 6 minutes
maybe
left.
we'll put that off till the next episode. So yeah, I wasn't
Futures
sure.
End. We will remember. This is our reminder, people, for
Yeah,
us to talk about it next time.
yeah. I'm sorry if it's in our episode description on YouTube, but with time running short, and maybe it's not the best week to talk about it because with New York Comic Con being this weekend, maybe there's going to be some big news coming out, and
Right.
it might be better to just push the subject off at least another week or so. But we will be talking about the Futures End, all the stuff with Brainiac, and the DC Band-Aid, as Bleeding Cool's been calling it.
DC Band.
There's going to probably be a lot to talk about and theorize about between now and March.
Right.
But,
So what did you get this week? What are you reading?
Big week for new comics. First, I'll just start off with what I bought off the rack today at my comic shop. I purchased Batman number 35, the beginning of the Endgame story from Scott Snyder. It was a very solid issue. The backup was great. You probably couldn't go anywhere near a comic book website this week without having the villain spoiled for you. I'll just say the Joker's returning, but we do not see him in this issue proper, so it's going to be interesting to see what he looks like. Hopefully he pops up in the next issue because the Joker's daughter's running around with his face, and just in short, it's basically the Joker is somehow controlling the Justice League, and apparently this is his end game. If Death of the Family was him showing how he loves Batman, this is how he hates Batman, and he's just ready to end it. I also picked up, Superman Wonder Woman number 13, the final issue of Charles Soule's run. It was a pretty good end to everything he's done. It also served as an epilogue to the Doomed crossover. You get a bearded Superman. You see Clark and Diana fighting alongside, and of course, they play up the romance a little. They have a fight, but it turns out, there's something kind of swaying their emotions. Next month is when Peter Tomasi and Doug Mahnke take over the title. I kind of wish Soule had been able to flesh out more of the stuff he established in the first arc. I didn't get to read Doomed as a whole. I really only read some of the Superman Wonder Woman chapters, so I do hope to get to read that eventually, because apparently the ending of Superman Doomed number 2 also factors into what's to come with this whole thing with Brainiac and Future's End. And I also got Smallville Chaos number 3, which is continuing season 11. And not to spoil too much for that issue, but if you've been following the Smallville season 11 comics, very interesting stuff. We finally get to see Darkseid in his true form, which, they hinted at here and there on the TV show, but of course they're limited by budget. They mostly showed him possessing people. But when they catch up with him, he's on what has been dubbed Earth Omega, and apparently he's been broken by the monitors in some kind of emotional way. I'm interested to see how Darkseid was broken, but it's almost like he's humbled, and possibly could someone like Darkseid try to turn himself around. I don't think he can technically redeem himself for all the evil he's done in the universe, but you see there's this kind of glimmer of hope that maybe he can become something more than just evil incarnate. Maybe they'll explore that more in future issues, or something tells me this is not the last we've seen of Darkseid, but the monitors are the true threat for season 11. And I picked up Arrow season 2.5 number 1, and as the title tells you, it's season 2.5. It's written by Mark Guggenheim, one of the executive producers / writers of the TV show. Just has the absolute same tone of the show. The artwork is great. It has that same darkness, the urban grittiness that I've spoken of in the show. The characters are written spot on, of course, because it's Guggenheim. And then the action is a little ramped up because they're not limited to the budget of a television show, because you're seeing Arrow and Arsenal, straddling a plane at 30,000 feet. Now, that's something you wouldn't necessarily be able to do week to week on the CW, but if you love the TV show Arrow, you owe it to yourself. Go pick up Arrow season 2.5, and it ends with this cliffhanger: is Brother Blood still alive? So that, there's
I thought they did themselves a disservice by killing off that character, because the actor did a great job, and yeah, I think they still had some play left in that character. Hopefully not.
Well, there's someone in the skull mask, but it remains to be seen if it's Sebastian Blood or an imposter, and the covers will be photos of the cast, and issue 1 is, I believe it was a season 1 promo picture. It was just a shirtless Stephen Amell, and if you remember from our last episode with us joking about the boylicious ads they've run for Arrow and comic books before, yeah, this is another. Someone's gonna think you're reading a Beefcake magazine.
Boylicious.
But as for other comics, stuff I've reviewed this week, I posted a graphic novel review over at darkknightnews.com for Wonder Woman Volume 5 Flesh. Another fine entry from Brian Azzarello. I believe it's the penultimate collected edition in his run. I'm pretty sure Volume 6 will be the last, because I was looking at what issues are collected into it, and I'm pretty sure that's the last one you'll see once it arrives in hardcover from Brian Azzarello. And then, of course, we have David Finch and his wife Meredith coming on the book soon, so their run would be collected. Well, at least the first arc would be Volume 7, but not the strongest volume so far from Azzarello, but still pretty good and still one of the best books in the New 52. I gave it an 8, and also DC sent me 3 books this week, which I was happy about, and you can catch reviews for those over at darkknightnews.com as well. Earth 2 World's End number 1, Batgirl number 35, and Clarion number 1. I will say, because we don't have time for me to reiterate my reviews, and plus I'd like you to read them anyway, Earth 2 World's End number 1, if you love the Earth 2 monthly, absolutely get it, and they're both going to be playing off each other going forward, but apparently it's going to tie into also the bigger picture with Future's End going forward. And if you haven't read the Earth 2 monthly, the first half of the issue catches you up with all the major points you need to know. I do recommend you go back and read the other Earth 2 material eventually, but it's a big double-sized issue, so we spent half in the past, half in the present, and it's all for $2.99, so you don't have to worry about paying more than cover price. Batgirl was a solid effort as well, with a new creative team of Cameron Stewart, Brendan Fletcher, and Babs Tarr. Much different in aesthetic and tone than Gail Simone's run. A lot of dialogue in it, though. You'll be exhausted once you're done reading it. And just succinctly, I'll say Clarion sucked. That's probably, with all the great comics out this week, there are better places to end your money. And as I said in the review, if you're looking for something of a mystical nature from DC, your money is better spent on Justice League Dark, Constantine, or Sandman Overture. And today I got Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, #1 in the mail from Archie Comics. So as of now, I have not read the issue. I mean, I've read the 6-page preview that came out, and that was incredible. And I'm guessing I'm probably going to give this a good review, but we're recording this on Thursday, October 9th, so probably tomorrow on Friday I should have Sabrina, the first issue, read, and that review will be on comicbookmovie.com, so keep your eyes peeled to the reviews section over there. So yeah, big week for comics. October, more seems to be on the way. Just a lot of publishers are giving it their all this month. Anything you have to add this week, Josh?
I picked up Scooby-Doo, Where Are You, number 50. No, that's a joke. I picked up actually quite a bit of stuff. I've got a lot of the Future's End one-shot tie-ins. I haven't read through all of them. I've literally got, like, I don't know, 12 of them, maybe 17. I can't even remember the number. I counted them at one point, but it was a pretty thick stack of books, and that's just the one-shots. I think I got Aquaman and the Others, number 6. I picked up New Gods, Godhead, number 1, which is the first one-shot, or not one-shot. I think it's an ongoing. I forget how many issues it's going to be, but.
Well, it's a one-shot, but it's the start of a big crossover.
Is it okay? I didn't remember if it was like Superman Doomed, where it was maybe going to be a few numbered issues, but
no,
yeah, it's sort of
it wraps up in Green Lantern Annual.
It does. Okay, it does wrap up in Green Lantern Annual. I couldn't remember, but it's going to be some. It's going to be some big stuff going on in Green Lantern. I picked up Green Lantern 35, and obviously my regular books, which is a pretty thick list: Superman, Batman, or rather Batman, Superman now, Justice League, and I picked up Batman Eternal last few weeks of issues and whatnot. I haven't done a ton of reading. I've been catching up on Superman Doomed, which has been a pretty big comic, which wrapped up in I think the final tie-in was in Action Comics 36. I'm trying to grasp at it.
35 came out.
35. Yeah, 35. No, it wasn't. It wasn't Action. I can't remember which book it was. It might have been Superman. But it was a pretty strong. It's a pretty strong story. It's not the best I've read in a while. I mean, I love me some Superman, and I'm just glad that he's finally getting, like, some really big crossover stuff. The characters of Superboy and Supergirl, they've kind of had little tie-ins here and there, back and forth. They did the Hell arc, and that was I think it was a little bit of a stronger arc, but it was interesting to see what they did with Doomsday. But yeah, a lot of stuff. I didn't pick up the Future's End. The Future's End tie-in, the Earth 2 one, the special, but I'm probably going to pick that up maybe tomorrow afternoon. I haven't had a chance to run to the shop this week, but I will say of one of the things with the Green Lantern is I really dig the covers. I don't know if people have seen. Just go check out the Green Lantern books, like the Godhead tie-in covers. They're just like really interesting. They're almost like if someone was making print ads for like Green Lantern, this is what they would look like. They're pretty interesting, but it's going to be a pretty big tie-in. Have you read Grayson? Have you been reading Grayson or picked up some of the issues?
I read only the first issue.
Yeah, I'm tempted to read them. I haven't read them. If anyone wants to comment or something like that and let us know what you think of that, if you've read it, let us know. But I haven't picked it up yet. But yeah, that was pretty much it for me. I'd say it's time to wrap it up. We're a little bit over the hour. Anything else to comment on, Eric?
No, nothing else for now. As I said, in our next episode, hopefully we have more to talk about when it comes to this whole Future's End thing. Hopefully more is coming out of New York Comic Con. So yeah, next episode Josh and I do together that covers comics. We'll be sure to get on that topic. you may remember in our last episode I said that I was hoping to record one with a guest last weekend as well. And she and I were all ready to go, and there was some weird Google Plus error, and she's kind enough to reattempt it sometime soon, so hopefully we find out just why we weren't able to execute the episode. So, yeah, it might just be she and I doing the episode together, depending on Josh's availability. But it's possible she and I will record that this weekend, pending her availability. And before I close, I just want to remind everyone to check out our blog page at multiverseentertainment.wordpress.com and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/a podcast for all seasons. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate you hanging out with us for a little bit longer than our normal time. Check out The Flash and Arrow, and check out Gotham as well. There's more to be coming soon, Constantine and others, and go visit your local comic book store. Check us out on Facebook, and have a good night.